Good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be in such an inspiring audience, an audience of innovators and creators of the future. And I'm happy to talk to you this afternoon about Ford's vision of that future and how the increasing complexity and particularly the software nature of the vehicle is going to help create a better future. And as we think about software and kind of why we are where we are, it's probably helpful to think about sort of what brought us to this point. And if you think about a vehicle, normally you think about it as a mechanical machine. And in fact, it's been that way for much of the 100-plus years of its history. But beginning in the 1970s, we began to introduce microcontrollers, microcomputers, to vehicles, initially for things like fuel regulation and delivery, and then emissions controls, and then it expanded from there into chassis controls, things like ABS, traction control, stability control, body control, infotainment systems. And so we went from one ECU to now up to 70 ECUs in a vehicle, and up to 70 million lines of code in that vehicle. So the vehicle itself is absolutely a software platform. And with connected vehicle and services, what we're doing from a Ford standpoint is taking that onboard computing capability and connecting it literally to off-board computing and storage to be able to deliver new services and new experiences even after that vehicle has been produced. Trying to get the clicker to work here. The other thing that we're doing in terms of connectivity and in terms of software on the vehicle itself and in this brave new world, we know that we can't do everything ourselves. We know that we'll need to work with partners in order to accomplish our collective vision of what that bright future is going to look like. That's one of the reasons, actually, that we're here at Web Summit, to immerse ourselves in the ideas and in the thinking that's going on here, as well as to look for and potentially work with partners that will help us in this space. We also know that our consumers want to stay connected when they're in their vehicle. The challenge for us is how do we do this in a safe way, in a seamless way? Increasingly, our consumers have connected lifestyles continuously. And from a vehicle and a manufacturer standpoint, we need to change and shift from having our consumers fit into our vehicles to having our vehicles fit into our consumers' lifestyles. And as we talk about connectivity, what I'd love to be able to do is show how it's part of a framework that we're using at Ford when we think about these systems and when we think about these capabilities. And so we are taking the elements of connectivity and what it means to have a connected vehicle, mobility services, and what's related to different transportation modes and different ways of moving people and goods from place to place. What's happening with autonomous vehicles and vehicles increasingly being capable of driving themselves. Data and analytics is going to have a much more prominent role to play as well in terms of processing information from the vehicle and helping make smarter and smarter decisions. And ultimately, it all has to deliver an engaging consumer experience, otherwise it's all for naught. I don't need to say technology for technology's sake, it doesn't amount to anything. If we aren't making our consumers' lives better, then we haven't really achieved anything. And so these 5 facets form what we call within Ford Smart Mobility, and a way of looking at collectively integrating all of these aspects to help make the world a better place. Now, if I step back to connectivity for just a moment, the way that we look at it is essentially 3 facets. There's beamed in, there's brought in, and there's built in. Now, if you think about beamed in technology and beamed in connectivity, In a sense, since the days of the AM radio, we've had connected vehicles because you've been able to remotely receive information into the vehicle. Beamed in today is much more sophisticated, obviously, with things like satellite radio. And then as we shift into broaden, what we're talking about there is leveraging the capability on a smartphone or a smart device that you bring into the vehicle, connecting the vehicle itself and keeping our consumers connected while they're inside the vehicle with their smartphone. Being able to leverage the contacts, the communication capability, the applications that are on that device. And then the third facet of connectivity is what we call built-in. So the vehicle as its own independent node on the network, capable of transmitting and receiving always on, always connected, in this sense, a data modem built into the vehicle. And from a Ford perspective, we view each of these facets as being interrelated, and we'll leverage the particular facet as it makes sense within a particular experience that we're trying to deliver. And so when we think about that broad-end capability that I mentioned before, one of the ways that we're leveraging that is with something that we call AppLink. So within Sync, our vehicle infotainment system, we have a linking technology. AppLink is the Ford-branded name of it, but actually we've created it an open-source version called Smart Device Link. And this is a way for you as a consumer or as a user or you as a developer to leverage the application that's resident on your smartphone, but enabling it to interact with the vehicle's voice controls and with its switch controls in a way that permits you to take full advantage of that application. It's in some sense similar to CarPlay or Android Auto, but a unique difference here is the access to vehicle data that will be made available through the AppLink protocol. The ability for that developer to take advantage fully of the screen that's inside the vehicle and display their application and their controls as they best see fit. So we think it's a way of enabling developers, we think it's a way of enabling our consumers, and it's also a way for us to keep that vehicle fresh and take advantage of the growing technological development of that application with a vehicle that was built maybe 2, 3, or 4 years ago. Now, connectivity is also going to result in a huge increase in the amount of information that's interchanged both between vehicles, vehicles with the infrastructure, and vehicles to the cloud. And when I talk about information, it's interesting, the panel that was right before me talking about wearables. In a sense, the vehicle is a mobile sensor. It is, in a sense, the biggest wearable. When we think about the amount of data that's generated in a vehicle, if we go with a more traditional vehicle like a Ford Explorer, for instance, 0.5 gig an hour, a more sophisticated vehicle like our Fusion Energy electric vehicle, 25 gigabytes of data per hour being generated. And so your vehicles will not only be able to know more about you and your health, they will also be able to know about their own health, be able to monitor their own situations. And if you think about that, the size of that data, 25 gigabytes an hour, we're thinking internally, what will we need in terms of storage, petabytes of storage potentially, in order to analyze all of that data and make productive use of it as well. Another point that I'd like to mention is that there's a lot of sensitivity, obviously, around privacy and security, and we are very, very cognizant of that. And we're very diligent in that aspect. We view the data as your data. It's our customers' data. It's our users' data. And we at Ford are merely stewards of that data on your behalf, not doing anything without your informed consent and permission. Our challenge is to deliver value that convinces you to share that permission. And as long as that equation is balanced in a productive way for you, we think it will make, again, for a better world. When you think about the vehicle as part of the quote-unquote Internet of Things, and when you think about the fact that billions and billions of devices will be connected, will be part of that total ecosystem. So again, as I mentioned earlier, clouds will interact with onboard systems and will have the ability to have access to real-time data, the ability to have an interface that allows you to interact with the vehicle wherever you are, an application on your smartphone allowing you to remotely interact with that vehicle, understand the state of charge of the battery, for instance, or if you're planning your route, understanding are there charging stations along the way. The ability to take data from other vehicles and from other sources and use it to deliver better experiences. Data and analytics in terms of analyzing that data, looking at patterns, understanding how our vehicles are behaving in the world, and even personalizing that storage so that if you are a user of a Ford vehicle, not an owner, but your preferences travel with you as they are enabled with potentially a mobile device that you're carrying. And so it's a way for us to stay connected, and it's a way for us to continue to deliver seamless experiences. All towards what end? Towards what purpose? Henry Ford had a vision of open highways for all mankind. And in the early 1900s, that vision was fulfilled in a, if you will, single-point solution, the Model T, a very affordable vehicle. He happened to pay his workers a great wage that they could actually afford that vehicle, and that literally opened up the highways. It opened up mobility. It created freedom. People were beginning to think about working in one place but living in another, and then playing in yet another. And I would say that over the last 100 years or so, his vision has absolutely been fulfilled. Today, there are over 1 billion vehicles in operation on our roads today. But if we project forward 30 years or so, and if the growth rates in terms of the automotive industry continue as they are today, we'll be looking at 2 billion plus vehicles by 2050. That's daunting. Where are all those vehicles going to fit? The fact of the matter is, they won't fit. And hopefully some of you had a chance to hear our chairman, Bill Ford, speak about this yesterday. We recognize that the mobility solutions of the future can no longer solely rely on that single-point solution of owning or leasing a vehicle. So how do we avoid global gridlock? It is, in fact, this network of solutions that I've spoken about. Being able to seamlessly find parking spaces, having your vehicles move you more efficiently, more productively, connecting with the environment and understanding what the weather is like, for instance, what the traffic conditions are like, being much more efficient in how we move goods and people from place to place. Connected and operating together in a seamless, multimodal transportation network. And from a Ford perspective, we understand, as I talked about before, we need to partner in this space. We need to create that future together. We need to be open for innovation, open for partnerships, open for understanding what makes sense within an automotive context, what things are happening outside the automotive context that might want to be a part of that future. And so, again, that's the reason that we're here at Web Summit. That's the reason that we are literally open for innovation. And that's also the reason that we'll be changing the way the world moves again. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and attention. Enjoy the rest of the conference.